We're rolling again. So, any advice that you would give to somebody with an eating disorder? Keep it down. Or who has a child, or anybody affected by an eating disorder? How would you say working with them makes you feel on a daily basis? And
so for patients, it is very individual. So I'd have different advice for all those probably in residency. So I think for patients with eating disorders, I thought maybe the numbers were so large that there was once we get something unifying everyone, we have an eating disorder. And I would say the one thing I've learned then it's accepting the treatment is that that's the hardest. Any one person. It's a lot of digging deep, finding out what's motivations. These behaviors, what are triggers. So in high school, I just think everybody's in a lot of hard work and met a lot of doctors along the way that I did not like. So for me, it's a challenge to just keep working kind of to figure out what is going to be the motivating factor. When I went to college, I thought I was going to be pre-med, but because I'm in the frontal lobe and there's more insight and there's more maturity. I think anyone who has an eating disorder will probably struggle with those thoughts on and off throughout their life at different times, but it's especially for the younger girls.
So you did your residency over at Patrick. Can you speak a little bit as to why you decided to do it there, and how that? Is there any patient you've had outside of residency that you would say in the broadest,
so I was married. I had just gotten
that had an impact on you?
My husband's job. There's one patient. The first several years ago, there's a problem. Sometimes she's that takes a while. Probably that the most restrictive patient I've ever seen for my life at that point. In and out of the hospital a lot, in and out. Because again, it's a lot of different residential treatment. That was my first bring the child to the I could part in that area. Never be monitoring things. She also just didn't share much, so I can be really frustrating. Never could break through the wall that was there. Started with just location.
And how did
I think I was frustrated, but I was also obviously very concerned. For people treating a physical eating disorder, and my advice would be mentally it didn't affect me. It's not what being on a professional dance track until, and that's actually the end of college. Across I had everything in pediatric disorders all my life. We tend, I remember in middle school, disorders together and put our weights up on the wall on a poster every Monday and every Friday. Find those differences. And I was lucky in middle school. I was prepubescent. I was tiny. I was always the shortest. But I remember the teenagers definitely having a lot of issues with that. So seeing a lot of purging and restricting, I was surrounded by it. My sister also has had an eating disorder for most of her life. She was a gymnast. And so I feel like I've been around it most of my life. And whereas some of the residents did not enjoy taking care of eating disorder patients because they felt there was a monotony to it, and I think some people can't really understand that mindset. For me, it was actually one of the joys of residency. Like, I really enjoyed when I was taking care of girls on the unit. So, and an occasional boy, but mostly girls. So I think for me it's kind of been a passion just because of my exposure to it, and it's just kind of continued out of residency as well. I had been surrounded by eating disorders all my life. I remember in middle school, our dance teacher put our weights up on the wall on a poster every Monday and every Friday. I was lucky in middle school. I was prepubescent. I was tiny. I was always the shortest. But I remember the teenagers definitely having a lot of issues with that. So seeing a lot of purging and restricting, I was surrounded by it. My sister also has had an eating disorder for most of her life. She was a gymnast. And so I feel like I've been around it most of my life. Whereas some of the residents did not enjoy taking care of eating disorder patients because they felt there was a monotony to it, and I think some people can't really understand that mindset. For me, it was actually one of the joys of residency. Like, I really enjoyed when I was taking care of girls on the unit. So, and an occasional boy, but mostly girls. So I think for me it's kind of been a passion just because of my exposure to it, and it's just kind of continued out of residency as well.
Okay, so I'm going to switch angles for this because this is only a one camera operation, so I'm going to like come over here and get you like from the side speaking, which is like an awkward angle.
Perfect. Love it.
Yeah, I know. It's better than the last person I interviewed where I was like, okay, make your hands shake. Okay, look sad. All right, and
get the nice Jewish profile there.
We're rolling again. Okay. So I'm gonna move myself over.
Okay.
So you deal with clients or patients, I suppose, with eating disorders now.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say working with them makes you feel on a daily basis?
It is very individual. So I think probably in residency I thought maybe because the numbers were so large that there was something unifying everyone. And I would say the one thing I've learned being out for 14 years is that there isn't any one person who has the same motivations, who shows the same tendency. Like, I just think everybody is very individual. So for me, it's a challenge to kind of to figure out what is going to be the motivating factor to improve, to kind of break free of the disorder, and so to speak. I mean, I think anyone who has an eating disorder will probably struggle with those thoughts on and off throughout their life at different times, but it's the ability to work past it and work through it. And so to try to find that motivating factor for every child is different.
Is there any patient you've had outside of residency that you would say, in the broadest, most HIPAA compliant terms, that had an impact on you?
There's one patient several years ago who I honestly don't know if she's even still alive. I mean, probably the most restrictive patient I've ever seen. In and out of the hospital a lot, in and out of different residential treatment. I could never, she also just didn't share much, so I never could break through the wall that was there. So I think I was frustrated, but I was also obviously very concerned from a physical standpoint for her. And honestly, because when she became 18, she left for another residential treatment, and I never saw her again. And I still wonder if she is alive or not. She was that severely affected.
Okay, I'm going to move back this way.
Okay.
Ooh, hello. Anyway, it's like I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm also like, okay, well, how much is the light affecting you?
No worries. No worries.
So I am... I would be auto-focusing, but...
It's okay.
Okay. And we're rolling again. So is there any advice that you would give to somebody with an eating disorder, or who's interested in dabbling, or who has a child, or anybody affected by an eating disorder?
So for patients with eating disorders, so I'd have different advice for all those different. So I think for patients with eating disorders, I think first, once we get past the denial that we have an eating disorder, then it's accepting the treatment. And I think that's the hardest. It's a lot of digging deep and finding out what's motivating these behaviors, what are triggers, what are ways to overcome them. I mean, that's a lot of hard work. And so my advice is to just keep working on it. It's not an easy fix.
I find the later teens is much easier because there's more frontal lobe and there's more insight and there's more maturity that they can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think, and especially for the younger girls, I just say we got to keep at it. And I know it's tiring. It's pulling you out of things that you like. It's pulling you out of school, but it does take a team to get better, and the patient is part of that team. For parents, the first step is acknowledging there's a problem, and sometimes that takes a while. And I think that denial from a parent in the initial stages can actually set us up for failure pretty early on. Because again, it's a lot on the part of the parent to bring the child to all the appointments, to take part in the therapy, to be monitoring things. And so I think that can be really frustrating, and especially if you're not seeing results immediate, because there aren't going to be immediate results. It's a process. For people treating eating disorders, my advice would be to see each individual as an individual. It's not what works with one teen is not going to work with another teen, and that's the same across everything in pediatrics, but I think we tend to group disorders together, and this is very much an individual disease, and you got to kind of find those differences and work with them with each person.
Thank you. Okay, so now comes the awkward part where I need to get B-roll besides the different angles. Okay. So I figured to make it the easiest as possible, I would have you like adjusting a scale as though you are weighing someone, even though I know you don't actually do that.
Okay, that's fine.
Which will probably just be your hands, so there's obviously there's nobody stepping on it. And then if I can get you just talking to another nurse, there will be no audio for that. There'll be like a voiceover, most likely something you've already said.
Okay.
I can actually stop the voice now. And then